Never set foot on the headland, Iris. Promise me that. Of all the things my husband Adam asked of me across 26 years of marriage, that was the strangest, and the only one he ever asked twice. He was not a man who made demands. He fixed things quietly, decided things slowly, and rarely raised his voice above the level of the sea wind he'd grown up beside. So when his face hardened on the rare evenings he spoke of his Irish boyhood, of a farm on a cliff he had left at 18 and sworn never to see again, I learned to let the subject die. I told myself everyone is allowed one room in their past they keep locked. I never imagined I would be the one handed the key. But Adam was gone now. A brain hemorrhage in the small hours of an ordinary Tuesday, the doctors said afterward. Sudden and total. The kind of thing that arrives without a single rehearsal. One moment he was the man who left 2 mugs of tea on the counter every morning so I'd find mine still warm. The next he was a date on a form. After 26 years I had become a widow at 53, with a grieving daughter who blamed me for things I hadn't done, and a silence in the centre of my chest where certainty used to live. Mrs. Brennan. The voice belonged to Ruth Calder, the attorney who had handled Adam's affairs. We were sitting in her office in Burlington 2 weeks after the funeral, the enormity of a life reduced to folders and signatures and the smell of fresh coffee neither of us drank. "There's one more item," she said. "Your husband was very specific about its timing." She slid a small box across the desk. Inside lay an old iron key, worn smooth by other hands in other years, tied to a fob of knotted rope and a single disc of green sea glass. Beside it, a sealed envelope with my name on it in Adam's careful draftsman's hand. "What is this?" I asked, turning the heavy key over in my palm. "Your husband purchased a property in County Mayo, on the west coast of Ireland 3 years ago," Ruth said. "His instructions were that you not be told of it until after he passed." She folded her hands. "The deed is already in your name. The taxes are settled for the next several years." A property in Ireland. I tried to make the words mean something. Adam owned nothing outside our house in Vermont, nothing I had ever seen on a statement, nothing he'd ever hinted at. We had lived comfortably but never richly, on his salary as a civil engineer and mine as a school librarian. "Where exactly?" I asked. "A place called Carrow Doon," Ruth said. "It appears to have been his childhood home. The records show it changed hands several times over the years before he bought it back." The headland. The forbidden place. The one corner of himself he had never let me near. "There's something else you should understand," Ruth went on, lowering her voice the way people do before bad news. "The property has become very valuable in the last year and a half. There have already been inquiries." "Valuable? It's a farm on a cliff." "It was," she said. "Critical mineral deposits were confirmed on neighbouring land about 18 months ago. Lithium, rare earths. There's been a rush. Your husband turned down several offers from extraction companies." She paused. "And his family in Ireland has filed to contest the will. His brothers claim he wasn't of sound mind when he repurchased the family land." My head was full of static. Adam, the most deliberate man I had ever known, called incompetent. Adam, who measured twice and cut once at everything in life, accused of confusion. I opened the envelope with hands that wouldn't stay steady. "My dearest Iris," it began. "If you're reading this, I've gone before I meant to, and I'm sorry. There is so much I should have told you and couldn't make myself face. The farm is yours now. I spent the last 3 years turning it from the worst place I ever knew into something I think you'll find beautiful. Something I built with you in mind. every inch of it. I made you promise never to go there. I'm taking that promise back. I'm asking you instead to go, just once, before you decide what to do with any of it. On the desk in the main house, there's a laptop. The password is the date we met, and then your maiden name. I love you, Iris. More than I ever managed to say out loud, Adam. I held the letter to my chest, while Ruth pretended to read something on her screen. Even from the far side of death, my husband was still ahead of me. I need to see it, I said at last. Of course, Ruth said. But you should know the brothers are organised, and the money in play is considerable. This could become unpleasant. I closed my fingers around the iron key until the edges bit into my hand. I'm going to Ireland, I said. I'd like to go now. 2 days and 1 sleepless transatlantic flight later, I was driving a rented car along a single-track road in the far west of Mayo. The Atlantic flashing silver between low stone walls, gorse blazing yellow on the slopes, fuchsia bleeding red along the ditches. I came over a rise and saw the gates. Tall, black, the words Carrow Doon worked into the wrought iron. Beyond them, the land fell away toward the sea in long green sweeps, dotted with stands of wind-bent trees, and at the heart of it, a farmhouse and a cluster of outbuildings, all freshly slated and lime-washed and gleaming in the slanting afternoon light. This was no abandoned ruin. This was an estate. Someone had loved this place into being. The iron key turned in the gate lock as if it had been waiting for my hand. I drove up the winding track with my heart going hard, equal parts dread and longing. What had Adam hidden out here at the edge of the world? What part of himself had he sealed away from me for a quarter of a century? The house was a long, low, 2-story farmhouse with a deep slate porch and tall windows facing the water. Nothing in its calm, generous lines suggested the pain Adam had always wrapped around the memory of this place. It had been loved, restored, reimagined. My hand shook as I fitted the key into the front door. The lock gave with a soft click, the door swung inward, and I stepped across the threshold into my husband's secret life. What I saw stopped my breath and put my hand to the doorframe to keep me upright. The entryway opened into a great room with bare beams overhead and a vast fireplace built of beech stone. But it wasn't the architecture that undid me. It was the sea. Everywhere I looked, the ocean. Paintings of breaking water and small boats running before the wind, photographs of light on a bay, old charts framed in plain dark wood, a model sailing yawl in a glass case, shelves of books with cracked spines about tides and stars and seamanship. My oldest love, the one Adam had always supported and never quite shared, the sea, the water, sailing, surrounded me in a room built like a shrine to it. And there, on a desk by the window, looking out at the long fall of the land toward the cliffs, sat a silver laptop with a single sprig of sea thrift, pink and salt-faded, laid across its closed lid. Before I could take another step, the crunch of tires on gravel reached me through the open door. Through the front window, I watched a black Land Rover pull in behind my little rental. 3 men climbed out, all of them carrying the unmistakable Brennan stamp Adam had worn. The same height, the same dark hair gone grey, the same long jaw. The brothers had arrived, and from the set of their shoulders, they had not come to welcome a widow to the family. I shut the door and turned the lock, my pulse loud in my ears. Adam's warnings about his brothers had always been vague and absolute at once. Faced now with their sudden arrival, Every instinct told me to be careful. The knock came hard. "Mrs. Brennan, we know you're inside. We only want to talk." The voice carried the soft Western accent that surfaced in Adam's own speech when he was tired or moved. I stayed silent and stepped back from the door. They weren't here for Adam. They weren't here to meet the woman their brother had loved for 26 years. They were here for a piece of ground that had been worthless until 18 months ago. I looked at the laptop on the desk. Whatever answers I needed were more likely there than out on that porch. Ignoring the rising volume of the knocking, I crossed the room, opened the computer and typed the date Adam and I had met, followed by my maiden name. The screen woke at once and opened to a folder labelled in his hand, "For Iris." Inside were hundreds of video files, each named with a date, beginning the day after his funeral and reaching a full year into the future. I clicked the first one. Adam's face filled the screen. Not the grey, drawn version of his final months that I now understood I had misread entirely, but Adam healthy, colour in his cheeks, eyes bright. He smiled that slightly crooked smile that had undone me at a friend's kitchen table half a lifetime ago. "Hello, Iris," he said. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you came to the headland anyway, after all those years of making you swear you never would." He laughed softly. "I should have known you couldn't resist, especially once Ruth had told you what's under the ground here." A lump rose in my throat. Even now, he knew me to the bone. "I made a video for every day of your first year without me," he said. "A year of me keeping you company while you grieve. A year of telling you everything I should have told you while I was alive. Starting with why I bought back the one place on earth I swore I would never stand on again." Outside, the knocking had stopped. Through the window, I saw the three men returning to the Land Rover, pulling documents from a case, conferring with the closed faces of people who hadn't gotten what they came for. On the screen, Adam went on. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease. It runs in my family. It's what really killed my father, whatever the death certificate says. It carries a risk of bleeding in the brain, sudden and without warning. The doctors couldn't tell me when, they could only tell me it was coming. I chose not to tell you or Clara. His eyes softened. I didn't want to spend whatever time I had left being watched for signs of dying. I wanted to live fully beside you, right up to the end, not fade slowly in front of you both. Shock and a clean, white anger went through me. He had hidden it. He had made the largest decision two people can make together, alone, and denied me the chance to prepare, to hold him knowingly, to say the things you only say when you know the door is closing. "I know you're angry," he said, as though he was sitting across from me reading it on my face. "You have every right to be. But I made that choice out of love, not out of cowardice, and I hope one day you'll be able to tell the difference." Out on the gravel, one of the brothers was on a phone, pacing. "When the diagnosis came," Adam said, "I decided to use whatever time was left to make one true thing. You always loved the water. You always talked about a place by the sea, a boat, a life lived half outdoors. So I went to the last place anyone who knew me would ever expect. The farm I'd run from at 18, vowing never to return." He leaned toward the camera. "What my brothers don't know is that I bought this land legally, from our father, before the old man died. He'd run himself into the ground, bad schemes, worse drinking, and he sold it to me for a fraction of its worth, desperate for cash, and made me swear not to tell my brothers, who still believed the place would come to them one day for free." There it was, the root of the legal challenge. They thought they were owed land that Adam had paid for honestly. It was a ruin when I bought it, Iris, the same ruin I grew up in. But this time, I had the means to remake it. Every business trip these past 3 years, I was here, standing in the mud, in the rain, watching it become what you're standing in now. Outside, the eldest brother had come back to press a document flat against the front window for me to read. Some kind of court order. "They'll come for it," Adam said, and his face hardened in a way I had almost never seen. "They never wanted this land until the lithium turned up 2 farms over. Suddenly, the worthless rock they mocked me for buying was a fortune. They'll try everything to take it from you, and they'll be cleverer than they look." A second vehicle was coming up the track now, a marked car, the blue and yellow of the Garda Síochána. The brothers watched it approach with the look of men whose plan was unfolding exactly as drawn. "In the bottom drawer of this desk," Adam continued, "there's a leather folder with every document you'll ever need. This place is yours, unquestionably. I made certain of it." His face gentled, "But whether you keep it or sell it is entirely yours to decide. I built it for you. I don't want it to become a weight around your neck." He drew a breath. "One last thing for today. Down at the boathouse, you'll find some boats I think you'll want to meet. Brendan looks after them, and after you, if you'll let him. They're the last gift I get to give you. Until tomorrow, love." The video froze on his smile as a new round of knocking began, more official this time. "Mrs. Brennan, Garda, we'd ask you to open the door, please." I took a long breath, closed the laptop, lifted the leather folder from the drawer, and went to face whatever was waiting. My phone rang as my hand reached the latch. Clara, calling from Boston. I almost let it go, then answered. "Clara, this isn't a good time." "Mum." Her voice was tight as a wire. "Why didn't you tell me about Dad's farm? Or the lithium? His brothers just called me. They're offering me a fair settlement if I help them contest the will. What is going on?" So they had already reached past me to my daughter. The realization lit something fierce and protective in my chest. They weren't only coming for me. They were reaching for the most vulnerable, most heartbroken person in the family. "I'll explain everything," I promised, watching the guard exchange words with the brothers. "But Clara, listen to me. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. These men are not your friends." "Mom, if there's real money—" "This isn't about the money," I said, and the conviction in my own voice surprised me. "This is about what your father wanted. Please trust me a little longer." There was a silence, then a sigh. "Fine, but call me back the second you can." I hung up and opened the door to a young Garda, flanked by 3 Brennan men whose faces ran from oily reassurance to open contempt. "Mrs. Brennan, I'm Garda Sergeant Quinn. These gentlemen have a court order requesting an inspection of the property as part of an estate dispute." I made myself smile, calm and level, the way Adam had always said I could be when it mattered. "Of course, Sergeant, but first, I think you should see these." I held out the leather folder. My husband anticipated this exact morning. The eldest brother stepped forward with a smooth, dismissive wave. "Family disputes are complicated, Sergeant. My sister-in-law is understandably emotional. She's confused." "I'm neither emotional nor confused," I said, still smiling. "I'm a widow standing on land that is legally mine, facing 3 strangers who happen to share my late husband's blood." I turned to the Garda. "I'd be grateful if you'd read these before you let anyone past my door." Quinn took the folder and went through it carefully, his face giving nothing away. The brothers' confidence flickered for the first time. I thought of Adam's video, of the secret he had carried to spare us, of the extraordinary thing he had made out of the worst memory of his life, and I decided I would not lose the last living proof of his love without a fight. Quinn looked up. "These appear to be in order, Mrs. Brennan. A clean transfer of deed, notarized statements, certified records of the original purchase." He turned to the brothers. "Gentlemen, I see no grounds to force an inspection today. This is a matter for the civil courts." The eldest flushed dark. "This is outrageous. That woman has no right." "That woman," I said quietly, "is Adam Brennan's wife, and I have every right in the world to stand here." They retreated to the Land Rover, with the guard following to see them off, and as they pulled away, I caught the look on the eldest brother's face. They had lost the first skirmish. The war for Cara Dune had only begun. I spent that first night in Adam's house. No, in our house, surrounded by the evidence of 3 years of secret labour. Sleep wouldn't come. My mind turned and turned. The hidden illness, the transformed farm, the brothers' hunger, the hundreds of recorded mornings waiting on the laptop. At dawn, I walked the property properly for the first time. The house was a quiet marvel, old farmhouse bones wrapped in light and warmth, every room shaped to a taste I recognised as my own. A small library stocked with the writers I loved, a sunroom facing east toward the water where the morning came in clean and gold. But it was the boathouse down a stone path to a sheltered slip that took the last of my composure. A man in his 60s was inside, coiling rope, and he turned at the sound of my step. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, wiping his hands. "I'm Brendan. Your husband took me on to mind the boats, and the place, and, if you'll forgive me saying it, you." "Iris Brennan," I said, putting out my hand. "Though I expect you knew that." He smiled, the corners of his eyes folding into a weathered map. "Mr. Brennan spoke of you often when he was here. Said you had salt water for blood, and that he never could keep up with you on the water." "You knew him well." "As well as he let anyone," Brendan said, and I understood that this was a careful, honest answer. "He was here near every month these past 3 years. Wouldn't delegate a decision he could make himself. That was him all over." He led me along the slip to where 3 boats sat under canvas. A black-hulled currach, light as a leaf. A small Galway hooker with its rust-red sail furled. And at the end, a wooden sailing yawl restored to a soft glow, her name freshly gilded on the transom. Saoirse. The word means freedom. My knees nearly went. "He tracked that one down himself," Brendan said gently. "Spent the best part of the year finding her. Said she was the boat your father built. Said you sailed her as a girl, before she was sold off after he died." I had not seen Saoirse in 35 years. I had assumed she'd been broken up for firewood decades ago. And Adam had found her and brought her home and never said a word. "Did he ever tell you he was ill?" I asked when I could speak. A shadow crossed Brendan's face. "Not in those words. But these last months he pushed harder, worked longer, kept adding to the place, like a man racing a clock only he could see." The confirmation stung and explained, both at once. I had taken Adam's restlessness in his final year for the ordinary weariness of a man near 60. I had never imagined he was building all of this, knowing he would never see it weather a single full season. "His brothers were here yesterday," I said, watching Brendan's reaction. His mouth set in a hard line. "They've been circling since the lithium turned up, suddenly very interested in a farm they hadn't visited in 30 years. "Tell me about them." Brendan secured a cleat before he answered. "Declan's the eldest. Property developer in Dublin, big talker, always acted like it was a favour to be in the same room as your husband. Niles, the middle one, solicitor, slick, the one who'll smile while he takes your hand off at the wrist. Cormac's the youngest. Followed Declan into money and never had a thought of his own that Declan didn't give him first. He shook his head. They made your husband's childhood a misery from what I gather. City boys who came down summers and looked down on the brother who stayed to work the land with their father. When Adam came back and bought the place, they laughed at him for throwing money at a bog. Right up until the surveyors came. He paused. They'll be back. Count on it. I'm counting on it, I said. Back at the house, I forced down breakfast and opened the laptop for the day's message. Adam appeared, seated in the small library I'd found the evening before. Good morning, Iris. I hope the house held you gently last night. That smile again, the one I missed with a physical ache. Today, I want to show you something. The camera's going to walk you down a hallway you maybe haven't found yet. The image moved as he carried the device down a corridor in the east wing and stopped at a closed door. This room is yours alone. The key is in the bedside drawer on your side, the small brass one with the wren stamped on it. I paused the video, went to the bedroom, and found the key precisely where he said. The door opened onto a corner room, flooded with the soft, even light of north-facing windows, and I had to put my hand to my mouth. It was a pottery studio. A wheel, a slab roller, shelves of glazes, a kiln vented to the gable, bins of clay, tools laid in rows with the exactness of a man who loved order. I had not touched clay in more than 20 years. After college, I'd set the wheel aside to teach, to keep us afloat while Adam built his career, to raise Clara. Someday had become a soft, sad word I used about my own hands. Adam's recorded voice followed me because I'd carried the laptop in. You gave up so much for us, Iris, and your work was the first thing to go. You never once complained. So I always promised myself I'd give it back to you. Tears blurred the bright room. There's one more thing, he said. Look in the cabinet under the window seat. I crossed to the cushioned seat that looked out over the falling green and the sea beyond. Below it, built into the wall, was a cabinet I'd have missed entirely. Inside lay a flat archival box. I lifted the lid and sank to my knees. My pieces. Dozens of them. Every surviving thing I'd made at college. The work I had believed lost in 20 years of moving. Adam had kept them, wrapped and labelled, hidden and safe, for 2 decades, waiting for the day he could give them back to me in a room built to receive them. On top sat a tall, slightly lopsided vessel I knew at once. My last piece before I quit, the one I'd been ashamed of, the one I'd nearly thrown out. Tucked beside it was a note in his hand. I always thought this was your best. Imperfect, brave, reaching for something. The hands that made it haven't forgotten how. I've given you the room. The rest is yours. I pressed the note to my chest, drowned in love and loss in the same breath. He had seen me, really seen me, in a way I had stopped allowing even myself. The sound of cars on the gravel pulled me upright. From the studio window I watched 2 vehicles climb the track, the familiar black Land Rover, and behind it, a silver coupe I recognized in an instant. Clara had come. And from the way she stepped out and walked straight to the brothers, smiling, shaking hands with uncles she'd never met, I understood they had been working on her since the moment she landed. Whatever fragile piece I'd found kneeling over my own old clay drained out of me. The fight for Carrow Doone had just turned personal. They came in without knocking, Clara leading with the unearned ease of a daughter's privilege, the brothers behind her like dogs that had learned to walk to heel. "Mom," she gave me a brief, stiff embrace and stepped back, her eyes travelling the great room. "This place is unbelievable. Why would Dad keep it from us?" Before I could answer, Declan stepped forward, and the resemblance to Adam was a knife. "Iris," he said warmly, "I think we started badly. We were taken aback by your sudden arrival, as you were by ours." The conciliation didn't reach his eyes. Beside him, Niall held a leather case that I'd have bet held legal paper, and Cormac hung back, watchful and silent, the family ghost. "Clara," I said, ignoring Declan entirely, "we agreed you wouldn't talk to your father's brothers until you and I had spoken." She coloured. "They called again this morning with a very reasonable offer. I thought I should at least hear it in person." Her chin lifted, the exact angle it had taken at 16 over a missed curfew. "Besides, they're my family too." "Family you didn't know existed 3 days ago," I said gently. "Only because Dad cut them off," she shot back. "The same way he kept this whole place secret. Doesn't that bother you? What else was he hiding?" The question landed too close to the truth I was still absorbing. "Your father had complicated reasons for the distance," I said carefully. Declan waved it away. "Ancient history. Families fight, especially hard ones like ours. What matters is moving forward together." "Exactly," Clara agreed, with the earnestness of someone certain they were being the reasonable one. "Uncle Declan explained it all. This land's been in the Brennan family for generations. Dad bought it from Grandad, but it was always meant to be shared." They'd had her for 3 days and she was already reciting their script. "And the sudden interest wouldn't have anything to do with the lithium?" I asked mildly. Niall stepped in, opening his case. "The mineral situation is one factor in a complex picture. We've prepared a fair settlement that honours Adam's wishes while recognising the family's historic claim." "We're prepared to be generous," Declan added, laying a grandfatherly hand on Clara's shoulder. "A third to you, Iris. A third to Clara. A third split among us. Everyone walks away. Everyone wins." Clara looked at me, already sold. "It makes sense, Mom. We don't need a place this size. We could sell it all, walk away with millions, and Dad's family stays whole." "Your father left this land specifically to me," I said, holding Declan's gaze. "Not to you, not to his brothers." "Out of confusion and sentiment," Declan said smoothly. "Adam wasn't himself those last years." Anger flared clean and hot. "My husband was sound of mind until the morning he died." "Then why the secrecy?" Cormac said, his voice softer than his brother's but no kinder. "Why hide a property from his wife and daughter? Why the elaborate arrangements with lawyers? These aren't the acts of a clear-thinking man." I thought of the videos, the studio, the boat with my father's hands still somewhere in her grain. Every piece of it planned with brutal clarity. Nothing about it spoke of confusion. "Mom," Clara said, gentler now, "I know it's hard. We've lost him, and now there's all these secrets, and this offer just makes sense. We'd both be set for life." The door opened behind them and Brendan appeared, his face tight. "Everything all right, Mrs. Brennan? I saw the cars." The brothers turned, annoyed. "This is a family matter," Declan said. "Brendan is my employee," I said. "He's welcome in my home." "His position is among the disputed assets," Niall put in. Brendan held his ground. "Mr. Brennan hired me himself. Made me promise to look after the place, and Mrs. Brennan, if anything happened to him." "We'll be reviewing all staff," Declan said, dismissing him. I had heard enough. "I think it's time you left. All of you." I let my eyes pass over the brothers, then softened. Except you, Clara. You're always welcome here. You won't even consider it, she asked, incredulous. I'll review any written offer with my own attorney, I said. I won't be pressured in my own house. Declan's mask slipped, and the hard man underneath looked out. This land is worth tens of millions with the mineral rights. We can do this pleasantly, or we can make it very difficult. Is that a threat? A reality, he corrected. You're a school librarian from Vermont, going up against people with far deeper pockets. Adam meant well, but he's left you somewhere you can't possibly win. I thought of the leather folder, of the videos, of the man who had measured everything twice. I believe my husband knew exactly what he was doing, I said. Now please go. Clara, you're welcome to stay for lunch. She hesitated, torn, then kissed my cheek quickly. I'll go with them for now. We've more to talk about. Just think about the offer. I watched them leave with a hollow opening in my chest. In 3 days, my grieving daughter had been pulled into the orbit of the men Adam had spent his life avoiding. And it was working. Brendan waited until the cars vanished down the track. Mrs. Brennan, there's something your husband asked me not to show you unless it became necessary. I think it's necessary. He nodded toward the path. We should walk. Some things shouldn't be said indoors, where walls have ears. I followed him across the yard, the morning sun warm on the slate roofs of the beautiful place my husband had conjured out of his worst memory. Whatever lay ahead, I was certain of one thing now. Adam had foreseen this war. The only question was whether he had armed me well enough to win it. Brendan led me past the boathouse to an old, half-ruined cottage at the seaward edge of the property, the one structure left deliberately rough. Your husband was a careful man, he said, producing a heavy iron key. After the brothers turned up unannounced last year, he got more careful still. They were here before. Once, caught wind of the lithium and came to look. Adam was out at the time, building the studio. They didn't recognize him. He'd let his beard grow during the treatments. He watched them from the cliff path, and that night he changed the plans for the place, starting with this. He pushed open the cottage door on a dim, ordinary interior, a few sticks of furniture, a cold hearth. Then he crossed to the chimney breast, pressed something, and a section of the stone wall swung inward on a hinge, revealing worn steps descending into the dark. There's a souterrain under this whole headland, Brendan said as we went down. An old one, from before there were written words in this country. People hid in them when the raiders came. Your husband found it, shored it up, ran power down here. The men who did the work thought they were building a wine cellar. At the bottom, he flicked a switch, and lights came up along a low stone passage that ran on into the hill. It opened into a dry, vaulted chamber lined with filing cabinets and a long table, the walls papered with maps and documents. He called it the strong room, Brendan said, a note of pride in his voice. Everything he knew about his brothers, and everything he knew about what's really under this land. I went to the nearest wall, where a detailed geological survey was pinned, showing not just Caradoon, but the surrounding farms for miles, marked in red ink with handnotes about depth and grade. Adam knew about the minerals, I said. Not when he bought it. He bought this place to make it beautiful for you, plain and simple. But 18 months ago, when the neighbor's land showed lithium, he hired his own surveyors, quietly. Brendan tapped the map. They found something nobody else has. The richest seam isn't under the low fields where everyone expects it. It's here, under the high moor. The rough acres up by the cliffs that look fit for nothing but sheep and weather. I followed his finger to a dense cluster of red over the very ground Declan had so generously offered to exclude from his division. 3 independent teams confirmed it, Brendan said. He swore them all to silence. The land Declan called worthless is worth more than all the rest put together. Brendan crossed to a cabinet and drew out a thick folder. And it doesn't end with the ground. Your husband spent years documenting how his brothers do business. Tax they never paid, deals built on lies, money that wasn't theirs to move. Enough, he reckoned, to finish all 3 of them if it ever saw daylight. I leafed through the meticulous pages, copies of records, sworn statements, the careful trail of a man who never did anything by halves. Why gather all this? I asked. He knew they'd come for the land once he was gone, Brendan said. He wanted you to have a hand to play. I thought of Declan's smug certainty, Niall's case of paper, the speed with which they'd turned my own daughter. He saw it all coming. Near enough, Brendan said quietly. Not everything. He didn't think they'd reach your girl this fast. The reminder of Clara stung. They're working her grief, Brendan went on, not unkindly. She lost her father, and along they come, offering her a piece of him. Stories, photos, the family he never gave her. It's a powerful thing to dangle in front of someone mourning. He was right. Clara had always been her father's girl, the same restless, puzzle-solving mind. His death had set her adrift, and adrift is where the brothers had found her. On the table sat a framed photograph I'd never seen. Adam as a boy, perhaps 12, standing on a slip not unlike our own, one hand resting proudly on the gunwale of a small wooden rowing boat, his face open with a plain happiness I had almost never glimpsed in the man I'd married. That's the boat his grandfather built him, Brendan said, following my eyes. The one good thing in his childhood here, he told me. His brothers burned it on the Strand one summer while he was away at school, just to take it from him. Another piece slid home. Adam's quiet, lifelong support of my love for the water, a love he didn't share, and the boat he had spent a year hunting down and restoring for me. Saoirse wasn't only a gift. She was a reclamation of a joy his brothers had taken from a boy who had nothing else. I picked up the photograph, and a plan began to assemble itself in my mind, the way a kiln load comes together piece by careful piece. Brendan, I said, does the laptop work down here? There's a secure network across the whole property. He made sure of it. Good. I need to watch ahead. The next week of videos tonight. And then I need you to help me arrange some meetings. With who? First, my daughter. Alone, away from her uncles. Then the solicitor Adam chose. And then I glanced at the wall of evidence Adam had built brick by patient brick. Then I'd like to meet the mineral company that's been so eager to buy this land. Brendan smiled for the first time since we'd descended. You're planning something he'd have approved of. I'm planning something worthy of the man who loved me enough to build all this, I said, and felt my own voice steady under me. And I'm going to need your help. Whatever you need, he said. Your husband gave me work when I'd drunk away my boat and my home and every reason to get up in the morning. He gave me back my life. I owe him everything. And that means I owe you. Yet another Adam I'd never met. His quiet generosity reaching into lives I'd never heard a word about. Over the next 2 days, I barely slept, running instead on resolve and the steady clarity of Adam's recorded voice. I watched a week of videos in a single night. They'll divide and conquer, he warned in one, as though answering the exact morning I was living. Declan will play the friendly face, Niall the legal threat, Cormac the silent watcher. And they'll go for Clara. She's the shortest road to knocking you off balance. In another, he walked the high moor, the supposedly useless ground his brothers had excluded. "This land looks like nothing, Iris," he said, the wind tearing at his coat. "Scrub and rock and bad footing. That's exactly why it's perfect. Nobody ever looks twice at what seems worthless." Armed with his foresight and my own growing understanding, I arranged to meet Clara at a small cafe in Ballyrain, the nearest town, neutral ground away from the brothers' reach and the emotional gravity of the farm. She arrived a quarter-hour late, defences already up before she sat. "I can't stay long. Declan's taking me to meet the family solicitor." "Declan?" I repeated mildly. "You've grown close in 3 days." She flushed. "They've been nothing but kind to me, which is more than I can say for you, treating them like the enemy." I sipped my tea and chose my next words like glaze on raw clay. "Do you remember the art history class you took? The one with the professor who talked about perspective? How where you stand changes everything you see. What does that have to do with anything? You've only heard their perspective. I'm asking you to look at this from one more vantage point. Your father's." "Dad's dead," she said flatly, and pain flickered under the words. "And he clearly didn't trust either of us enough to tell us about this place while he was alive." I reached into my bag and took out a tablet. "Actually, he left something for both of us." "What is that?" "Your father made videos, Clara. Hundreds of them. One for every day of this first year. Messages to guide us." I turned the screen toward her, cued to the one file he'd labelled simply, "Clara, when she needs it." Her face went pale. "He made videos. He knew." "He knew he was dying," I said softly, finally giving her the truth. "Polycystic kidney disease. He inherited it. He chose not to tell us because he didn't want us watching him for the end." "That's impossible. He'd have told me." But the certainty had gone out of her voice. "Watch it," I said. "Hear it from him." She pressed play with a trembling finger, and there he was, vivid and well, his eyes creasing into the smile that was so entirely his. "Hello, my clever girl," he said. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. And knowing you, you're furious about all the secrets I kept. You never could stand being in the dark, not even as a toddler." A short laugh. Tears welled in Clara's eyes. "I should have told you I was sick. I should have given you time to ask all those questions you're so good at asking." That I was selfish. I wanted our last years to be ordinary, not a vigil. "I hope someday you'll forgive me." He shifted closer to the camera. "There's something else you need to know. About my brothers. Our trouble wasn't some petty family falling out. When I was 19 and away at college, they used my name on forged papers to swallow my share of our father's affairs. When I found out and threatened to expose them, they swore they'd make it look as if I'd been in on it from the start. So I left. I changed my name from Aidan to Adam, small enough to keep my head down, large enough to start clean. And I built a life in America. Your mother, you. It was more than enough." His face hardened. "But they never changed. Whatever they're telling you now, hold on to this. They wanted this land for decades, not out of love, but out of greed. And they'll use anyone to get it, even my daughter." The video ended on his concerned face. Clara sat unmoving, tears running silently. "He was protecting us," she whispered. "All of it, not just the illness." "Yes. They've been lying to me." "Not about everything," I said. "The land is worth a fortune, that part's true. But they didn't tell you about the high moor, they conveniently left out of their offer, or how much is really there. Understanding sharpened her face into something I recognized. They're trying to cheat us. Us, I said, and hope moved in me. Does that mean you're back on my side? Mom, I never left it. She looked down, ashamed. I just wanted to feel close to him through them. They had stories, photos of him as a boy I'd never seen. I understand, I said, taking her hand across the table. Grief opens us in ways we can't plan for. But now we need to be cleverer than they are. Together. She straightened, and the resolve that came up in her face was so much her father's that my heart twisted. What's the plan? I smiled and felt the first real steadiness since the funeral. First, we meet my solicitor this evening. Not the family one your uncles want, but the man your father chose for exactly this. Then tomorrow we have an appointment with Atlantic Earth Minerals. Why? Because knowledge is leverage. And right now we know something your uncles don't. Exactly where the lithium is. And exactly how much. I showed her the surveys from the strong room. They think they're dealing with a confused widow and a naive girl. Time they learned otherwise. For the first time since her father died, Clara laughed, a real one. Dad always said you were the smartest person he ever met, that under the quiet librarian there was someone who could outthink anybody, if she was pushed. Did he really say that? I asked, surprised. All the time, she said, wiping her eyes. He said the worst mistake a person could make was underestimating Iris Brennan. That evening, with Clara beside me, I laid the whole of it out for the solicitor Adam had chosen, Donal Maguire, an old man with sharp eyes who listened without interrupting and then, when I finished, sat back with something close to delight. Mrs. Brennan, he said, your husband told me you'd surprise me. He didn't say by how much. The brothers had walked into Carodoon believing they were dealing with the weakest possible opponent. They had no idea that their early success with my daughter had only set the stage for what was coming. They arrived 3 days later at 10 in the morning sharp, the Land Rover crunching up the track with the confidence of men for whom victory was a formality. Behind it came a sleek car I didn't recognize. I watched from the great room window, dressed not in the soft clothes of a grieving widow, but in a tailored suit I'd bought for this exact morning. Appearances matter when you're springing a trap, and I meant to be received not as a victim, but as the opponent Adam had always known I could be. They're here, I called to Clara, who came in from the kitchen looking equally formidable in dark blue, her father's watch, one of his most treasured things, bright on her wrist. Ready? She asked, nerves and steel warring in her face. Completely, I said, and squeezed her hand. Remember, let them talk themselves into the corner first. Brendan appeared. The others came in through the back as you asked. They're set up in the dining room. Perfect, I said. The bell rang and Brendan went to answer it, with the practiced courtesy of a caretaker who knew his part in the morning's choreography. Good morning, gentlemen. Mrs. Brennan and Miss Clara are expecting you. This way. They came in with the casual entitlement of men used to owning rooms. Declan first, then Niall with his case, Cormac trailing, and behind them a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who radiated corporate weight. Iris, Declan said, his smile missing his eyes. Good of you to see us. This is Charles Ashworth, Chief Executive of Glanmore Critical Metals. We thought an industry voice might help our discussion. So they'd brought a mining executive to bury me in technical talk and valuations. Predictable. How thoughtful, I said. I've had the dining room prepared. Shall we? I led them through the house, noting their assessing glances at all the work Adam had done, and into the long dining room where the table had been set with documents at each place, and the polished neutrality of professional preparation. "Please, sit," I said. "We've a great deal to discuss." As they settled, confidence still firmly in place, I stayed standing at the head of the table. "Before we begin," I said, "I want to thank you for your earlier offer. It was educational." Declan's smile widened, reading my words as surrender. "We're glad you've had time to consider it with Mr. Ashworth's expertise on hand. We can talk now about the most advantageous way to divide the assets." "Yes," I said. "Division. That's exactly what I'd like to discuss." I picked up a small remote from the table and pressed it, and a screen descended from the ceiling at the far end of the room. The brothers exchanged a look. They hadn't expected this. "If you'll look here," I said, and clicked. A detailed map of Carrow Doon appeared. Boundaries, contours, formations. This is the full survey, all 2,200 acres, not the 800 Lowfield acres mentioned in your offer. Niall shifted. "The High Moor is unworkable. We left it out for simplicity." "How considerate," I said. "Except for one detail." Another click, and the map filled with the red of the minerals survey from the strongroom, the great seam blooming beneath the worthless high acres. Ashworth straightened in his chair, his professional calm slipping as he leaned in. "As you can see," I said, "the primary deposit lies almost entirely beneath the moor, the very ground you so generously offered to exclude." Declan's face darkened. "These surveys are unreliable. Glanmore's analysis indicates—" "Actually," said a new voice as the connecting door opened, "those surveys were verified by 3 independent teams." The brothers turned in shock as a woman in a dark suit entered. Dr. Saoirse Green, Chief Executive of Atlantic Earth Minerals, Glanmore's chief rival, followed by Donal Maguire and 2 associates. "What is this?" Declan demanded, half rising. "This," I said pleasantly, "is a meeting about the true value and the future of Carrow Doon. Dr. Green has taken a serious interest, particularly after reviewing the complete geological data my husband compiled." Ashworth shot the brothers a betrayed look. "You told me you had exclusive negotiating rights." "They don't," Maguire said smoothly, laying papers on the table. "Mrs. Brennan holds clear, uncontested title to the entire property, mineral rights included. The documents the Brennan brothers have shown you have no legal standing." Declan slammed his hand down. "This land has been in our family for generations. Adam had a moral obligation." "A moral obligation," Clara said, speaking for the first time, her voice steady, though her knuckles were white on her glass. "Like the one you had to my father when you forged his signature and took his inheritance. Or when you threatened to frame him if he told the truth." The brothers froze, colour draining away. "What exactly is she talking about?" Ashworth asked, looking increasingly like a man who wanted to be anywhere else. "Perhaps these will clarify things," I said, and nodded to Maguire, who passed sealed envelopes around the table. "Copies of documentation my husband preserved concerning certain historical transactions involving family assets. I'm told the statute of limitations has run out on some of it. The revenue and the financial regulators might still find the rest interesting." Niall tore his open and scanned it, alarm climbing his face. "These are private family matters, completely irrelevant." "On the contrary," I said, finally taking my seat at the head of the table. "They establish a clear pattern of fraud that goes directly to your credibility, including the way you've misled Mr. Ashworth about your standing to negotiate at all." The room went quiet as the brothers understood the completeness of their exposure. Adam had documented all of it, the old crimes against him, the new manipulations, the attempt to seize a fortune while wearing the mask of generosity. "What do you want?" Declan asked at last, the confidence gone out of him. "I want you to leave Caradun and never come back," I said simply. "I want you to drop every attempt to contest my title and every effort to use my daughter. In exchange, these documents stay private, seen only by the people in this room." Ashworth stood abruptly. "I believe my company's involvement has been based on incomplete and possibly fraudulent information. Mrs. Brennan, I'll contact you directly regarding any future discussion of mineral rights." He gave the brothers a look of pure disgust and left. Declan watched his ally go, and his face turned cruel. "You've no idea what you're doing, Iris. The extraction costs up on that moor are brutal. The logistics alone." "Actually," Dr. Green said, "Atlantic Earth has developed methods suited precisely to these formations. We're prepared to make Mrs. Brennan an offer that respects both the difficulty and the exceptional potential of the site." As the meeting transformed from the brothers' planned takeover into the counterstroke I had spent days assembling, I caught Clara's eye across the table. Her small smile said everything. Pride, vindication, and the bittersweet knowledge that Adam had prepared us both for this exact morning, from the far side of death. By the time the brothers left 2 hours later, defeated, exposed, and bound by a settlement Maguire had drafted in advance, the future of Caradun had been settled exactly as my husband intended. Not divided among the greedy, not sold to the highest bidder, but kept whole, for the family he had chosen and loved, Clara and me. As their cars disappeared down the track, Brendan came to stand beside me. "He'd be proud," he said quietly. "You played them just the way he believed you would." I watched the dust settle, a strange tide of feeling moving through me, triumph laced with grief, strength rising out of the deepest vulnerability I'd ever known. "We're not finished," I said, thinking of the videos still waiting, of the year and the life still stretching ahead. This was only the first battle. But it was a battle we had won, with weapons Adam had patiently forged and a strength he had always seen in me, even on the days I couldn't see it in myself. The weeks after passed in a blur of practical things. The settlement finalised, the agreement with Atlantic Earth structured, a careful inventory of everything Adam had made. Clara stayed through all of it, her resentment of her father's secrets softening into something nearer awe at his foresight. We fell into a ritual of watching his daily videos together each morning, both of us finding comfort and guidance in his recorded presence. The negotiation with Atlantic Earth surprised everyone, including Dr. Green. Rather than selling the mineral rights outright for a lump sum, the way most landowners did, I insisted on a structured arrangement that put environmental protection first, required the gentlest extraction methods available, and established a substantial trust to restore the moor once the seam was worked out. "These terms are highly unusual in the industry, Mrs. Brennan," her lead negotiator said. "Then perhaps the industry needs more unusual terms," I answered, borrowing my husband's quiet certainty. "That lithium has waited in the ground for a very long time. It can wait a little longer, until we agree on how to take it out responsibly." To my surprise, Dr. Green was intrigued rather than put off. "Your husband mentioned you'd read science before you turned to libraries," she said. "He told me you'd insist on doing this right, not just profitably." Another piece of Adam's planning revealed itself. He had been quietly laying groundwork with the people he trusted, for negotiations he knew he wouldn't live to see. 1 month after I claimed my inheritance, I stood in the studio Adam had built, north light pouring through the windows, a lump of clay center on the wheel for the first time in 20 years. My hands remembered before my mind did. The first pieces were lopsided and honest, then steadier, then almost good. Through the window I could see the slip and Saoirse, and beyond her the changing colour of the bay. Brendan had begun teaching me the boats again, my middle-aged body protesting, then surrendering to the old rhythms of wind and water. "Mom!" Clara appeared in the doorway one morning, the laptop in her hands. "Today's video is different. I think you should watch it alone." I set down my tools, curious. "Different how?" "It's marked for a specific day," she said. "He titled it, 'When Iris Makes Something Again.' He knew you would eventually." She handed me the computer with a gentle smile and went out. Alone among the tools of a passion I was rediscovering, I pressed play. Adam appeared, seated in this very room before any of the supplies had been installed, the space bare but for the windows. "Hello, my love," he said. "If you're watching this, you found your way back to your hands, back to the thing you set down for us all those years ago." I touched the screen. "I've been thinking about legacy," he said. "What we leave. Most people picture it as children, or money, or things accomplished. But there's another kind, the freeing of possibility in the people we love." He gestured at the empty room around him. "This space isn't finished as I'm recording, but in my mind I can already see it full of light and colour and your work. I can see you standing at the wheel, finally shaping the things you've carried inside you all this time." I glanced at the rough bowl drying on the bench, eerily close to what he had pictured. "I've arranged everything to give you freedom, Iris," he went on. "Security through the mineral rights, protection from my brothers, a room built for making. But what you do with that freedom, that's your legacy to build, not mine to dictate." He leaned in, his eyes intent. "The farm, the boats, the studio, they aren't the inheritance. They're only the tools. The real inheritance is possibility, the chance to become more fully yourself, with nothing in the way." I paused the video, undone by how thoroughly he had known me. Known the maker still alive inside the practical librarian and devoted mother I'd let myself become. When I started it again, his face had gentled. "One request, though it's entirely yours to take or leave. In the great room there's an empty alcove by the hearth and a plinth I had built for it. When you're ready, really ready, I hope you'll make something to stand there. Something that holds not just what you see of this place, but what you feel about it. The place that brought me back to my beginning and will carry you on into your future." He gave his familiar sign-off. "Until tomorrow, my love." I sat still a long while. Then I went to the great room and found the alcove and the empty plinth waiting. Over the following weeks, as autumn turned the moor to bronze and rust, I sketched and discarded dozens of ideas, none of them right, until one morning I watched Clara take Saoirse out alone across the bay, small and certain on the bright water, and something settled into place. The piece took shape slowly, not a vessel, but a tall ceramic relief, a sculpture in layered slip and translucent glaze. The headland as it stands now, sea and cliff and grass, rendered in clear detail. Beneath it, half hidden in glaze laid like mist, the ruin Adam had bought. And beneath that, the bare land that had watched generations come and go. Running up through those layers of time, two small figures in a boat, a man and a woman, their faces left indistinct enough to be anyone's and ours. And behind them, visible only if you knew to look, a third figure at the tiller alone, a young woman steering her own course out toward open water. When it was fired and finished, Brendan helped me lift it onto the plinth. Clara stood back, studying it with wet eyes. "It's him," she said. "And you. And me." She traced the path of the small boat with a finger from across the room. "The past, the present, and the future of this place." "Legacy," I said simply. "Not what's left behind, what carries forward." That evening, watching the sun go down behind the high moor that held our improbable fortune, I felt Adam's presence, not as a ghost or a memory, but as a partnership that had somehow outlasted his body. He had left me not only security, but a framework for becoming, the freedom to find out who Iris Brennan might be when nothing stood in her way. The forbidden farm had become hallowed ground, not a place of secrets and old pain as he had known it, but a sanctuary of possibility, his last and greatest gift. Winter came down on Carrow-Doon with a hard, clean beauty. Gales off the Atlantic, frost lacing the windows, smoke streaming flat from the chimney into a steel sky. I decided to stay through the season rather than go back to Vermont, drawn to see the full turn of the year on this land that had become my unlikely home. Clara had returned, reluctantly, to her work in Boston. Her firm wouldn't extend her leave forever. Our morning ritual continued by video call, the three of us still bound together, Clara in her apartment, me by the fire in the farmhouse, and Adam's recorded self holding us steady across time. "The high moor is something after fresh snow," he remarked in that day's message, recorded a year before in the same room. "If Brendan's kept the old quad bike running, take it up to the cliff path at first light. The view's worth losing the sleep for." I smiled. Only the evening before, Brendan had offered to show me the winter tracks Adam had mapped across the land. 6 months had passed since I had faced down the brothers. True to the agreement, they had kept their distance, though Maguire occasionally forwarded technical questions from their lawyers about boundaries as Atlantic Earth began its careful preliminary work. The extraction was proceeding slowly and well, the company honouring our unusual terms. Dr. Green had become an unexpected ally. Her initial commercial interest had warmed into genuine respect for the patient, protective approach Adam had envisioned and I had insisted on. My phone rang one afternoon, pulling me from my thoughts. Clara, hours before our scheduled call. "Everything all right?" I answered at once. "I'm not sure," she said, her voice tight. "Cormac came to see me. Here, in Boston." My grip tightened. "Cormac? What did he want?" "Officially, to apologise for his part in turning me against you." A pause. But it felt wrong. He kept asking little questions about the farm, whether I visit often, whether I'd noticed any unusual activity on the land. "Did you tell him anything?" "Of course not. I kept it vague." Her voice dropped. "Mom, I think they're planning something. That felt like reconnaissance." A chill that had nothing to do with the weather moved through me. The brothers had been quiet for months. Too quiet for men who didn't know how to leave a thing alone. "I'll talk to Brendan and tighten up security," I said. "And I'll have Maguire remind their lawyers about the terms." "There's something else," Clara added, hesitant. "Cormac said Declan's been ill. His kidneys. He needs surgery." He tried to play on my sympathy. Said families should pull together in hard times. The same hereditary disease that had killed Adam. The disease their father had carried and hidden behind a kinder cause of death. I wondered whether Declan too had concealed his diagnosis from his brothers, the way Adam had hidden his from us. "Be careful, Clara," I said. "It might be genuine. It might be another lever." That's what I thought. I hate this, being suspicious of every word from his family. It shouldn't be this way. After we hung up, I stood at the window over the snow-covered track, unease settling cold in my stomach. That evening, I went down into the strong room, seeking guidance from Adam's meticulous records. If the brothers were preparing another move, perhaps he had foreseen this too. In the bottom drawer of his desk, I found a folder labelled in his precise hand, "If they come back." Inside was a detailed contingency plan, pre-drafted injunctions, contact details for the authorities who had once looked into the brothers' affairs, and, surprisingly, a sealed letter addressed to Declan. A note was clipped to it. "A last resort. Deliver only if there is no other way." What had my husband written to his estranged eldest brother that he considered so dangerous it should be used only in the final extremity? The envelope was sealed, the contents a last mystery he had left for me to open, and only then. I carried it up to the house and put it in my pocket, my mind turning over possibilities. The next morning, Brendan knocked on the kitchen door as I finished breakfast. "We've visitors," he said, his face grave. "All 3 brothers, and 2 men I don't know. They're at the gate, asking to come up. Declan says it's a personal matter, not the property." I went to the great room window. 2 vehicles waited at the entrance, the Land Rover and a plainer sedan. "What do you think they really want?" "Nothing good," Brendan said. "But turning them away might push them to do whatever they're planning anyway. Better to control it on our ground." I considered, my hand finding the letter in my pocket. Keep security alert, but out of sight. Let them come to the house only. Nowhere else. As Brendan went to relay it, I called Maguire to tell him of the visit, then Clara to warn her that her uncles had appeared at the farm less than a day after Cormac's call. "Do you want me to come?" she asked instantly. "I can be on the next flight." "No," I said. "Stay where you are. This may be exactly what they want, both of us here, cut off from our support." Through the window, I watched the gates open and the cars come up the long track. I went to the bedroom and retrieved one more thing Adam had left for precisely such a confrontation. A small digital recorder built into a plain brooch. Whatever they wanted, I meant to have it on record, word for word. When the bell rang, I was waiting in the great room, seated in the armchair facing the entry, the recorder pinned to my sweater, the sealed letter in my pocket. Brendan showed them in with courteous formality. Declan entered first, noticeably thinner than before, his colour bad beneath an out-of-season tan. Niall and Cormac followed, faces carefully blank. The 2 strangers came last, one carrying a medical bag, the other a leather portfolio of the kind solicitors favour. "Iris," Declan said, his voice lacking its old command. "Thank you for seeing us without notice." "Family always seems to arrive unannounced," I said mildly. "Please, sit. Brendan, would you bring coffee for our guests?" As they arranged themselves on the sofas opposite, I noted the tension in their postures, the way Niall kept glancing at Declan with poorly hidden worry. Whatever had brought them, it turned on the eldest. "I'll be direct," Declan began once Brendan had gone to the kitchen. "I've been diagnosed with the same disease that took Adam. Polycystic kidneys. My kidneys are failing." So Clara's information had been right. I kept my face still. "The specialists give me months without a transplant, years with the right one." He gestured to the man with the bag. "This is Dr. Harmon, my consultant, and Mr. Pearson, my solicitor. "I'm sorry to hear of your illness," I said carefully. "But I don't see what brings it to Caradoon." Declan exchanged a glance with his brothers. "Our family has a rare tissue type. Finding a compatible donor is extremely difficult." A cold suspicion began to form. That sounds hard, but again, why bring it to me? "Because," Dr. Harmon said in a careful, professional tone, "based on the medical records we've reviewed, your late husband would have been a near-perfect match. And given the genetics, there's a significant chance your daughter would be compatible as well." The audacity of it struck me like a hand to the chest. They wanted to test Clara. They wanted to use my daughter's body as a possible source of salvation for the man who had tried to steal her inheritance and turn her against me. "You want my daughter tested as a potential kidney donor for you," I said, making certain the recorder caught every syllable. "Just preliminary blood work to start," Niall put in smoothly. "Nothing invasive." "And if she matched?" I pressed. "Then we'd hope she might consider becoming a living donor," Declan said. "A person can live a full life with one kidney. The risk to the donor is small." I sat in stunned silence, marveling at the breathtaking entitlement of it. After they had deceived, manipulated, and tried to rob us, they now expected my daughter to undergo surgery for a man she barely knew, a man who had tried to turn her against her own mother. "Let me be sure I understand," I said at last, my voice level despite the storm inside me. "You tried to take this land from me. You used lies to set my daughter against me. And now you've come to ask whether she'll cut herself open to save your life." Declan at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I know how it appears. But we're still family, Iris. Blood is blood, whether we choose it or not." "Blood," I repeated, thinking of Adam's videos, of his ruined childhood, of his fierce determination to protect us from these men. "You're right about one thing, Declan. Blood does connect us, but not in the way you think." I drew the sealed letter from my pocket and saw the flash of recognition cross his drawn face. "Adam left this for you," I said, holding it just out of reach, "with instructions to deliver it only if there was no other way. I believe this qualifies." He stared at the envelope. "Why not Niall or Cormac?" I asked, turning to the other brothers. "Siblings are usually better matches than a niece." Dr. Harmon cleared his throat. "We've tested both of Mr. Brennan's brothers. Neither is compatible, owing to some unusual genetic factors." "And there are no other family members?" I pressed, watching them. "No one else who might be a match?" Another glance passed between the brothers. Cormac looked away, suddenly fascinated by the window. "No," Declan said firmly. "No other siblings." I nodded slowly and handed him the letter. "I think you should read this before we go any further." With unsteady hands, he broke the seal and unfolded the pages. His eyes moved across the first lines, then widened. The colour drained from his face as he read on, the paper shaking in his grip. Niall leaned forward. "Declan, what is it?" But Declan didn't answer, lost entirely in his dead brother's words. When at last he looked up, the businessman was gone, replaced by a man face to face with ghosts he had thought long buried. "How long have you known?" he asked me hoarsely. "I only know that Adam left it for you," I said. "I haven't read it." "What did my husband write?" He handed the pages to Niall, who began to read with Cormac peering over his shoulder. Their expressions shifted in near unison. Curiosity to disbelief to something close to horror. "This can't be true," Niall said. "Father would have told us." Would he? Declan laughed, bitter. The same father who set us against each other our whole lives, who played favourites by his mood, who kept secrets the way other men keep change in their pockets. Someone, I said quietly, should tell me what my husband wrote. Declan refocused on me as if remembering I was there. Our father had another family, he said. A woman in Cork. A relationship that began before our mother left and went on for decades. 2 more children, a brother and a sister in their 40s now. I felt the pieces fall. And they share your tissue type. According to this, Declan said, scanning the page again. Yes, the same rare markers. Adam found medical records, I don't know how. He confirmed it. He even had their details kept current by a private investigator, year after year. In case, I finished for him, one of you ever needed exactly what you're asking of Clara now, a match from the family you never acknowledged. The irony was almost too large to hold. The brothers had come to ask my daughter to give up part of her body for a man who had wronged her, while unknown siblings existed who might give the same gift freely. There's more, Cormac said quietly, taking the letter. Adam writes that he only found all this after his own diagnosis, when he went looking for relatives, for matches, for some understanding of the thing that was going to kill him. He was already building Carrow Doon for Iris, but learning about these others and how father had hidden them made up his mind to break completely from the Brennan way of secrets and use. He wanted to leave something honest behind, something built on love instead of obligation. Tears pricked my eyes. I heard my husband's whole moral architecture in those words. Even now he was teaching all of us about truth. So, I said finally, it seems you have alternatives to my daughter, 2 half-siblings who share your markers. Strangers, Declan protested weakly. We don't even know them. And whose doing is that? I said. Your father chose to hide them. You and your brothers chose to treat Adam as less than yourselves. These are the consequences of those choices. Dr. Harmon cleared his throat again. Forgive me, but medically, any potential donor should be approached quickly. Mr. Brennan's condition is deteriorating. I looked at the man before me, Declan Brennan, once powerful and intimidating, now small with illness and the collapse of the story he'd told himself about his family. Despite everything, I could find no satisfaction in his suffering. Adam wouldn't have wanted that. The contact details for your half-siblings, I said. Are they in the letter? Declan nodded mutely. Then I suggest you begin there, I told him. Not with demands, with humility, and with the truth. Tell them who you are. Explain your situation, and give them the choice that is theirs to make, exactly as it would have been Clara's alone to make. Not yours and not mine, if you had come to her honestly from the start. And if they refuse, Niall asked, then Clara can decide for herself, knowing all the facts and all the alternatives, I said. No manipulation, no pressure, no lies. The brothers absorbed this in silence, and the family resemblance to my husband sharpened in their chastened faces. The same long jaw, the same deep-set eyes. We'll go, Declan said at last, rising with effort. Thank you for this. He gestured to the letter which Cormac carefully folded and returned to its envelope. As Brendan showed them out, I stayed seated, turning over the revelation and all it meant. Adam had known he had other siblings, people who might have welcomed him, who shared his blood and his disease. And he had chosen to keep that knowledge in reserve, using it only as protection for Clara and me after he was gone. That evening, as snow drifted past the windows of Carrow Doon, I opened the laptop for the day's video. Adam's face appeared, recorded a year before in this very room. "Hello, my love," he began, his smile crossing the distance. "If I've judged the timing right, today might be the day my brothers finally play their medical card. They've known about the family disease for years. Father made sure to tell them when I was first diagnosed as a young man, though not one of them ever offered help." I gasped softly, astonished again. "If they've come to you or Clara about a donor match, then you'll have given Declan the letter about our other siblings." His expression grew thoughtful. "I thought many times about reaching out to them myself over the years, but their lives were built, their families settled. I questioned my right to disturb that with ancient history and a biology that might mean nothing to them." He leaned in. "The truth is, Iris, family was never about blood. It's about choice. I chose you, and Clara. I hope whoever Declan finds in Cork will be allowed the same freedom, to help or not, to connect or not, without manipulation, without obligation." As the video went on, Adam sharing his thoughts on family and legacy with that characteristic care, a sense of completion settled over me. The brothers had come to use Clara as a means to an end, exactly as they had always used Adam. Instead, they had been forced to confront the tangled web their father had woven and the consequences of their own choices. Whether they would reach their unknown siblings with genuine openness or with the same old tactics was no longer mine to manage. We had broken free of the toxic gravity of the Brennan family and claimed our own legacy through Cara Dune and the life we were building on it. Adam had turned his childhood prison into my sanctuary, his painful past into my open future. The forbidden farm had become hallowed ground, not because of the riches under its soil, but because it stood for his final triumph over the family that had cast him out, and the love that had sustained him in spite of them. Spring would come again to Cara Dune. The boats would go out on the bay. The lithium would be drawn slowly and carefully from the high moor, and the trust would one day put the moor back the way it was. I would keep making things in the studio my husband built, finding my own hands again, season after season. Clara would visit when she could, and someday perhaps bring children of her own, to sail Saoirse and walk the cliffs and learn the land their grandfather had reclaimed. And Adam would go on living in the legacy he had so carefully shaped. Not only in the daily videos that would eventually run out, but in every corner of this place that held his love, his foresight, and his refusal to let the cruelty of the past dictate the shape of the future. The forbidden had become the cherished. The secret had become the celebrated. And I, Iris Brennan, had become the keeper of a legacy built not on obligation or blood, but on the only foundation that lasts: love, freely given and gratefully received. "Until tomorrow, my love," Adam said as the day's video ended. "Until tomorrow," I whispered back, knowing that while tomorrow would bring another message from the past, it would also carry me one day nearer to the future I was now making, inspired by his example, but shaped at last by my own emerging strength. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, share it with someone who loves a tale of love that outlasts a lifetime. And tell me, wherever in the world you are, what you would have done in Iris Brennan's place.